uncertainty and confusion. There was a similar question that was asked in the class this week. I think it was about anxiety. Is there a specific thing about uncertainty and confusion, or just in general?
Do you remember what you said when, a moment ago, you said from a distance everything? Do you remember what you said? In essence?
You know, there was a show on Netflix called, I think, The Messiah. You've seen it, right? I think it's the last episode where there is this agent who has had some checkered past, and there is, of course, the Messiah who can look at people and see their past, and also look ahead and see their future. And of course, they've taken Messiah into custody, and they're going to go back to Israel and try him, and who knows what else. And all of a sudden, the engine catches fire. And then the second engine catches fire. The character who plays the Messiah is very calm. He doesn't really show any emotions. The agent, on the other hand, is really, really frightened. He sees his past, and like all of us, you know, when you're forced to look at your past and reflect on it and examine it, you can't but maybe be sad, be angry, and that's how he feels. He's sad and angry, but not the Messiah. He's just very relaxed, and maybe it's because he knows that in the end everything will just work out. But you know, he's a man of faith, whereas I suppose the rest of us are just, we spend 2 days in the world of doubt, and a second in the world of certainty, and when you're certain, you have faith and you believe, but then it just disappears. You know, sometimes you just live your life in a certain way where after 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years you look back and you have nothing in your pocket. And it just dawns on you that you can't do anything that's right. So whenever you have to make any decisions about anything, there is a great amount of doubt and uncertainty and fear. You just can't trust yourself in anything. Then there are these, other areas of life where you're relatively proficient. I mean, it's You've done them every single day. You know, life is routine, and you haven't been tested, so you feel pretty good about yourself. You know, you read some philosophy text or some sacred scripture, and you're patiently trying to plow through all the difficulties, and you imagine yourself to having great amount of patience. And then you go to the store or you go to the ATM, and you have to stand in line for 5-10 minutes, and all of a sudden frustration comes over you. We're also thin-skinned, you know, when it comes to things that we're not completely sure about. There's doubt, there is fear, there is confusion. And you do a couple of things. You never put yourself, or at least try never to put yourself in circumstances where you just don't have power over the environment. That you have basically removed all the unknown components so you could have power over the environment. You know, I was thinking about Cassie's friend, your friend as well, I guess, William. You know, in some ways, he reminds me of David. So positive, in some ways, so delusional about being, you know, so excited about the prospect of becoming a father or a mother, or whatever the case may be, that contains a lot of unexamined narratives, you know. And then when you sit with them and you talk with them, they're so sure of themselves. You, on the other hand, who've gone through, you know, a couple of steps ahead of them, you kind of just sit back and say they have no idea what's coming to them. But all of that aside, I think you know, when my sister built her house and when Saeed's sister built her house, they were given an estimate of how much their house is going to cost. They wanted to know that they have enough in their bank, and what happened to, you know, Saeed's sister is that they were given an estimate of about 1.2 million, and the house went all the way to 1.7 million. And their relationship with the Persian architect just soured. You know, you have all these ideas in your head that things are going to go according to how you want them to go. And then you go in there and things happen and you have emotions that you had heard about in abstract, maybe even wrote about or thought about, but once you're in the situation, it's a very, very different game. You know, even if you read the few first pages of Daughter of Fire, you know, it's a nice thing to say that I'm going to go to India, I'm going to find a teacher, and that teacher will show me and tell me what yoga is, will probably give me some exercises, and I'll be mindful of those exercises for a few months or a few years, and then I'll come back, we'll go back to England or go back to America, and we'll become very proficient.
Good night, good night, good night.
شب بخیر بابا.
Sticky.
So you enter a certain environment imagining that you know how things are going to unfold. And I guess the first doubt and confusion and fear, uncertainty that she has is, I was on the rickshaw for 7 hours, I'm dirty, I'm dusty, I'm smelly. Why is this guy stopping at this teacher's house? If I want to see this teacher, I want to make sure that I'm clean and smell good and all that. And despite her complaint, the driver doesn't really much care, stops, she goes in. And then another confusion sets in, which is, why am I all of a sudden so excited about seeing this man? I just saw him, and he has left this impression. And then he's kind to her for the first few hours of the following day, but the rest of the book, it's a difficult place to be. You give your time, you give your energy, then you give your money. Then this teacher erases all the narratives, all the stories that used to give your life meaning and purpose, gets rid of your illusions as to what a spiritual quest is all about. And it's no longer abstract. You're no longer like standing outside and looking in and fantasizing about, how something is going to be. You're in the belly of the beast and it doesn't feel good. Should I stay? Should I go? Yes, no, maybe. And it's too much. When we had gatherings, sometimes Hussein would ask us to play music or to sing. As long as there were no new people in our gatherings, it would be fine. But the moment you had one or two strangers, it's as if, there was something so strange about these new people you had never seen in these gatherings, that you'd worry so much about the way they would judge you. And you would punish yourself, And so near the end of the night when we were going to leave, we would tell Hussein, or we would tell Hussein, can you please next time not invite anyone that we already don't know? I guess, the point of all of this, if you trust and have faith, you will still have fear and doubt and confusion and uncertainty. They will just not be as intense. They'll still have impact and effect on you, but maybe not as much. If on the other hand you don't have any of those, you don't have the faith or the trust, then you have a good amount of doubt inside you. You know, we have a friend, well, it's not really a friend, it's a story I heard from Sarah that one of her friends, this woman has 3 kids. Her husband left her. When it was the tax month, he came to realize that because he has to file the taxes as single, he has to pay about $17,000 to the government. And it just pained him, made him very angry. And he didn't really much care about seeing the kids or paying for any of their expenses. So this coming year, what he did, he took this wife of his or ex of his to court, and he now has 50% custody, not because he wants to see the kids, not because he loves the kids, but now he can claim them on his taxes. You know, nobody enjoys paying taxes. So I'm thinking that this man, when he heard from the person who was doing his taxes that he has to pay almost $20,000, it made him really, really angry. And he began to think about ways as to how he can lessen the dollar amount to the government, but to no avail. So what does he do? To gain some power over, giving less money to the government, he does the unthinkable, which is this woman whose life was filled with certainty that she's going to have the kids, enjoy the kids. Now she gets a letter from the court. Now she finds herself in a place of uncertainty and doubt, confusion and anger. She goes to court, assuming that because this man has never been around and because he's never paid alimony of any kind, that the judge will simply look at this woman or look at the man and say, no, the woman is going to have full custody. But that wasn't the case. Any surprise that's unpleasant is going to create confusion. There is no way out of it. We spend so much time trying to have power over life, over our spaces and environments, both inwardly and outwardly. But it doesn't take very much, to get rid of all of that. Jean-Paul Sartre has this really beautiful kind of story. You can picture it in your mind's eye. It's about this waitress, carrying like 10 cups of really, really hot coffee on a tray. And as, the tray is over her head trying to get through the traffic at the cafe, all of a sudden a single drop, just one tiny drop, falls on her wrist and the entire tray goes everywhere. And I think our life very much is like that despite all the power that we try to amass to have relative amount of control over our lives, it really doesn't take very much for everything to just fall apart. It also depends on what exactly you're confused about. It's one thing to be confused about or be angry about the fact that, you got a C+ in an exam at school, but all of a sudden to realize that you just don't want to go to school, period. It's no longer about the subject, it's about the entire, academic arena that no longer amuses you, that you want to walk away. So the more meaningful, the more fundamental, the more substantive something is, whenever there is confusion and uncertainty in it, it'll impact you far greater. when I see someone coming to my classes over and over and over again, I say to myself, okay, well, for whatever the reasons are, whether they're cursed or blessed, it seems like they enjoy thinking and talking about these ideas outside of the class. It's a nice day out. Why would anyone want to spend or waste that day, which is quite nice, to house themselves in a classroom that's smelly and ugly and dirty? And so, what happens to me psychologically is I think about this person, I say, okay, he or she has been coming to my classes for the past like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. When you ask them what it is they want to do, they say, oh, I think I'm going to be, I don't know, a carpenter, or I want to be an economist, or I want to be a geography teacher, or whatever. And I say, how the hell is that related to the ideas that we talk about, And in order to remove, confusion and uncertainty from their lives, and it's an imposition on my part, it's a projection, but nevertheless, we all are engaged in it. I manipulate them in the sense that I try to encourage them to have a future where they can go to school, they can get their master's or a PhD and find themselves in a classroom. They don't need to be very good. All of us are relatively decent. No one is really bad. No one's really that great. And it's as if they're always it's always an extension of the classroom. They're always around ideas, And once these ideas become, a part of you, then you will choose your friends according to those ideas. You will choose your companion according to those ideas. And you realize that, well, when it comes to your identity, when it comes to what is most meaningful to you, you're not going to be in doubt. You're not going to be uncertain. The other areas are something different, what companion you want to get, how you're going to raise your kids in a culture that doesn't really care much about. This culture cares more about the unborn rather than those who have already been born. So I think the only problem with, and I'm not assuming that I understand your question and the intentions behind the question, but I think once you begin the journey, if you stay on it, whatever the journey may be, until you get to the finish line, there's going to be doubt, and there's going to be confusion, and there's going to be fear. And there isn't much you can do about it. As long as you love and as long as you desire intensely, you will continue on the journey until you get to the finish line. Unless you get to a place where you say, I'm never going to get to the finish line, and I accept my fate. We had a friend, and she was from a different country. And she came here because she liked the guy and things didn't go well for them. And she was so confused and so hurt, and she was uncertain about her future. She went back to her country and She got her PhD in religious studies, I think. But she couldn't get a job in her field. You know, she worked at catering for a while. She worked at a flower shop for a while. And then she met someone. And I hear they're going to get married and have children and all that. هیچ راهی نیست کان را نیست پایان غم مخور. That if your journey is from doubt to certainty, it's a path and eventually end. You will eventually get to the finish line. It's a poem by Hafiz. Yusuf گم گشته باز آید بکن آن غم مخور. That if Yusuf is symbolic for certainty, if it's symbolic for happiness, he says, maybe you have lost your path, maybe you have lost your happiness, maybe you have lost your certainty. کلبه احزان شود روزی گلستان غم مخور. And when you become filled with doubt and fear and confusion and anger, your heart or your soul becomes so sad. Kulbe ahzan, that your heart becomes a home to sorrow. And Hafiz says, that it is true that you have lost your path. It is true that your heart has become a home to sorrow. But remember that this home filled with sorrow and darkness will once again see light, and it'll be filled with flowers and become a garden. ای دل غم دیده حالت به شود دل بد مکن بین سر شوریده باز آید به سامان غم مخور. That when the heart has been stung by the arrow of sorrow, it's in a good amount of pain, but if the start line is sorrow and the finish line is joy, you will eventually get to joy. بین سر شوریده باز آید به سامان غم مخور. If your mind is filled with confusion, jealousy and envy and frustration, confusion, it will once again find comfort and certainty. هان مشو نومید چون واقف نی از سر غیب. Do not become hopeless, because you have no idea what's happening in the world invisible. Behind the curtain there are all these gods, playing tricks on us. هان مشو نومید چون واقف نی از سر غیب. باشدن در پرده بازی های گوناگون غم مخور. That everything that happens in your life is really to some extent the will of God. And though you may not be aware of it, there are these games that are being played upon you that will eventually benefit you. For the first maybe 10 years or so, when we would go to Hussein's house, you would go kind of sad and sorrowful and confused and angry because you had lost so much of your life. You couldn't really have fun with anything out there. We would go to Hussein's house, he would read some Quran, maybe some poetry, some conversation, and then it was like you were high for, I don't know, a day or two. But then you would descend, you would go back to your original place, which is confusion. But it becomes more frightening because it's not like you live in the cave all by yourself and you only have to deal with your own confusion. When you go out there, you see people laughing and having a good time, and they're an architect of their life and they know exactly where they're going and what they're doing. And sometimes, in certain moments, you look at them and you say, how come I can't be like that? You know, how come I can't have what they're having? And so it just adds more to your confusion and to your uncertainty and to your anger. And you have to just wait it out. You know, and if you've seen the movie The Matrix, the first one, you know Cypher, who plays the Judas, but not really Judas. Judas was a nice guy. You know, he has seen what Morpheus has done over the years. He has seen what Neo has done. But the doubt never leaves him. I don't know what's wrong with him. Maybe he's always been power hungry. But there comes a point where the doubt becomes so strong that he's willing to betray everyone and everything. So, I should have really asked a better question when you posed this question, which was, when you say uncertainty, when you say doubt, you know, sometimes you doubt yourself. Sometimes it's not yourself you doubt, it's the other person that you doubt. And I think both are valid and justified. I'm not really quite sure which is easier, which is worse or better. When I finished my unit at Sierra College, I went to the counselor to see if I can transfer to Psych State. And he said, Amir, you're done. I had been such a bad student for most of my life that I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could I be done? Did I really complete 60 units? I fulfilled all the ridiculous requirements. And then I went to Sac State, and you had to fill out all these forms before you graduate to make sure you have all of your units and categories fulfilled. But again, you know, just because Sierra College had given me some good news 2 years prior, it didn't really mean that I had full confidence in myself. I couldn't believe that I was getting done with my bachelor's. And sometimes you just get in the habit of just being uncertain about so many different areas in your life. Even though you have no reason to be, it just becomes a habit. I'm sorry, Stacey. I could ramble on some more, but You know, there is this poem, I'm not quite sure who the poet is, and Cassie knows these few lines, because we have sang it in so many of our gatherings over the past decades. And I don't know if this is someone's station or someone just inspired to write such a poem. And by station, I mean that you have come to a certain place in your life where you simply accept things as they are. You know, it's like someone just being very sick and they wrestle with the sickness to find a cure for it. They haven't really fully accepted the fact that they're going to get even more sick and eventually die. So by station is meant that someone has gone through the struggle, have come to realize perhaps there is no cure, and simply accepts that this is how things going to be, you know, and my eventuality will probably just be death and that's it. دلم در عاشقی آواره شد آواره تر بادا. That I have fallen in love, that my heart has fallen in love. And that in itself is quite devastating, because the moment someone has captured your soul or your heart, it's like as if you no longer belong to yourself, your life no longer belongs to you, your time no longer belongs to you, your thoughts no longer belong to you. It's like everything has been stolen from you. And it's such an awful place to be, you know. In some ways it's really, really good, but the problem with love is that it comes with a great amount of longing, because the thing you want to be around is always absent, you know. So دلم در عاشقی آواره شد. Avara basically means becoming homeless, that the moment you fall in love, you essentially just become homeless. There is no anchor, you know. تنم از بیدلی بیچاره شد. That what's the use of having a body but having no heart, because the heart gives you purpose, it gives you passion. But when someone else has your soul in their hand, you're just this lifeless corpse. You just move from point A to point B, but almost everything you touch just dies, you know. You have no passion for anything that you do, because it's kind of like the letter of the law and there is no spirit in it. And so the first part of the poem is دلم در عاشقی آواره شد آواره تر بادا. That my heart has fallen in love and it has become homeless because of it. I pray that my heart gets broken even more and I become homeless even more intensely, more devastatingly. تنم از بیدلی بیچاره شد بیچاره تر بادا. That may my body remain a corpse, and may the life that exists in my body, which gives it passion and meaning and purpose and identity, may that which gives my body life never come to me, always be absent. So I could always be without remedy. I could always be in pain. I could always be in a state of longing and yearning. I mean, that's what homelessness really does to you eventually. دل من پاره گشت از غم نزانگونه که به گردد. When you fall in love and you become homeless because the only thing that can give you a home is the thing you have fallen in love, and your body carries no soul within it, so there is no remedy to your life, there is no remedy to your body, it's just aimless. دل من پاره گشت از غم نزانگونه که به گردد. A body without a soul, a heart that belongs to someone else. Now I live in the cradle of sorrow, and it's a sorrow that there is no remedy to or for. Nothing can remedy it. اگر جانان چنین خواهد یارب پاره تر بادا. That if my heart has been broken and has been shattered, and sorrow is the cradle in which I live, if there is a God, I hope that my heart shatters even more, so I become more of a homeless, so my sorrow can increase tenfold. اگر زاهد دعای خیر میگویی مرا اینگو. Anyone who's a philosopher, anyone who's a religious person, if they look at me and they feel pity for me, I hope they will take this pity and make it into a prayer, and I want them to pray this way for me, که آن آواره کوی بتان آواره تر بادا. That this man whose heart has been broken, this man who has become homeless, this man whose pain has no remedy, this man who desires his heart to even shatter more, that may he become more confused, may the longing become more intense within him, may his heart shatter even more, may his sorrow increase tenfold. You know, for some people, confusion and doubt and uncertainty makes them more religious, more spiritual. They get broken more. And the more you're broken and the more you ask help from other people, the more you realize no one can help you. And then very naturally, organically, automatically, what happens is, you know, there is this beautiful painting by Farsh Chian. There is no body, there is just this arm that's, you know, just reaching out into the heaven. And I think what happens is when you realize that no one down here, no one in your community, in your circle can help you, naturally just something comes out of you. And you know, you want some help from the unseen world. And maybe that is the function of this particular poem, that the more homeless and the more intense the pain, the more difficult to find remedy for it, the more longing, the more yearning, the more intense your praise will be, not from or to human beings, or anything that's been touched by human beings. I think if you're confused about your physical life, it's a really, really good sign. You should gather all of your energy and cunningness and find a way to fix them, you know. If on the other hand your confusion and your uncertainty has to do with your, lack of a better word, spiritual, it's actually quite good. There is this poem, نگفتی گر بیفتی گیرم دست. کنون افتاده ام. You know, it's like you put your child on the bicycle and you tell him or her that just in case you fall, I will be right there, protecting you and taking care of you and all that. So the poet says, you know, I was planning to go to this place. I passed by a mosque. There was a sermon. I fell in love with the guy and the sermon that he was giving. And in the sermon he was saying, نگفتی گر بیفتی گیرم دست کنون افتاده ترک اکنونم ای دوست. That in his sermon he had said that if you go on the spiritual quest and should you fall and should you become homeless, should you be filled with sadness and sorrow, that this invisible hand will come down and lift you. I have fallen and I can't get myself up. And I had faith in the sermon that just in case I fall, you know, gods will come down and lift me and comfort me. I don't see any signs that gods or angels or sages are coming to aid me. And there is so much confusion and anger and uncertainty about that. You know, that you do so much and then you find yourself completely broken. And then you wait and wait and wait patiently for someone to come and comfort you, but nobody comes. شنیدم عاشقان را می نوازی مگر منزن بیان میان بیرونم ای دوست. That in the sermon I was told that if I was to fall in love and if I was to be guided by love, that eventually love, which has the power to break me and in fact has broken me, if I remain in a state of brokenness, the gods will come down and heal me. I have been broken and I've been bleeding, but there are no signs of gods coming down to help me.